The twin suns of Zerthos cast long purple shadows across the gleaming white buildings of the capital city. Ilara stood at her bedroom window, watching the light play across the curved architecture that had housed her people for thousands of years. She should have been practicing her responses for tomorrow's ceremony, but instead her mind wandered to the stars barely visible in the evening sky. Ilara was different from other Vozarians. While her blue skin and silver hair matched her peers, her thoughts did not. Since childhood, she had wondered about the worlds beyond their atmosphere, questioned traditions others accepted without thought, and dreamed of something more than the rigid path laid before her. "Ilara, are you rehearsing?" Her mother's voice echoed through their home's communication system. Ilara sighed and turned from the window. "Yes, Matron Selene," she replied, using the formal title as was expected in the days before the purity test. She sat on the edge of her bed and picked up the small silver disc containing the test preparation materials. The holographic display activated, showing the standard questions and approved answers. Every Vozarian at age 20 underwent this ritual, determining their place in society. No one failed. Not in generations, a soft knock at her door interrupted her half-hearted studying. "Enter," she called. Her father, Council Elder Torvek, stepped into the room. His tall frame and stern face revealed nothing of his thoughts, as was proper for a high-ranking official. "You are not ready," he stated, looking at the barely touched preparation materials. "I know the responses," Ilara said, trying to sound confident. "Knowing and believing are different matters." He walked to her window and closed the privacy screen, cutting off her view of the sky. "The sensors detect your mind wandering during practice sessions. The purity test measures true devotion to our ways, not memorized answers." Ilara looked down at her hands. "What if I don't pass?" Her father's expression hardened. "That is not an option for my daughter. The consequences would affect our entire family. You will pass, or you will no longer be welcome in this house." He paused. "The purification process is unpleasant. Some say it changes who you are." After he left, Ilara tried again to focus on the approved materials, but the questions troubled her. "Do you believe contact with lesser species contaminates our culture? Would you report impure thoughts in others immediately? Is the preservation of Vozarian purity more important than individual expression?" The expected answer to each was obvious. The truthful answer in her heart was not. Night fell completely over the capital city. The household grew quiet as her parents retired to their sleeping chambers. Ilara waited, listening to the familiar sounds of the house systems powering down to nighttime levels. She couldn't stay inside with these thoughts circling her mind. She needed the open air, the stars, and the quiet of her secret place. Ilara slipped from her bed and changed from her sleeping clothes into a simple dark outfit. Vozarians rarely broke rules, making security minimal within the city. She knew exactly how to leave her home undetected, having done so many times when the pressure of her life became too much. The night air felt cool against her blue skin as she navigated the empty streets. The capital slept, unaware of the single figure moving through its perfectly ordered pathways toward the natural hill at the city's edge. This small rise had somehow escaped the city planner's efforts to reshape the landscape. It remained wild, with strange native plants and an unobstructed view of the stars. It was the one place Ilara felt free. She reached the top and sat on a flat rock, tilting her head back to take in the vast sky above. Somewhere up there, other beings lived lives she could barely imagine. The official teachings said outsiders were dangerous, impure, and intellectually inferior. Yet Ilara wondered how beings capable of traveling between stars could be as primitive as her lessons claimed. Something sharp pressed against her hand where it rested on the ground. Curious, she brushed away the soil, revealing a metallic edge catching the moonlight. Ilara dug further, uncovering what appeared to be an old device. Unlike anything in current Vozarian technology, its surface was weathered, covered in symbols she didn't recognize. She turned it over in her hands, fascinated. When her finger passed over a particular section, the device hummed to life, startling her so badly she nearly dropped it. A small light pulsed on its surface, and a quiet beeping sound emerged. Ilara stared in wonder. This was clearly not Vazarian technology. Had she found evidence of visitors from beyond their world? The device suddenly projected a small holographic display of unfamiliar symbols and what appeared to be a frequency band. Without understanding how, Ilara realized this was some kind of communication tool. She pressed the blinking light, unsure what would happen. A burst of static emerged, making her jump. Then, amazingly, a voice came through, distorted and distant, but unmistakably speaking some foreign language. Unknown signal detected. This is Communications Officer Jack Carter of Earth Vessel Starlight Venture. Please identify. Ilara froze, heart pounding in her chest. She was hearing the voice of an alien, a human, something strictly forbidden. She should report this immediately. She should destroy the device. She should run home and forget this. Happened. Instead, she pressed the button again and whispered, "Hello?" Static crackled, then the voice returned stronger. "Hello? I'm receiving you. Who is this? Where are you transmitting from?" Ilara's hands trembled. "I'm Ilara. I'm on Zerthos." "Zerthos?" That's in our approach vector. "We're scheduled for first contact diplomatic mission there in 2 days. Are you a Vozarian? How do you have this communication technology?" "I found it," she said quickly, "buried on a hill. I don't think anyone knows it's here." "Interesting. Our records show no previous contact with your world." The voice paused. "Are you okay? You sound nervous." "I shouldn't be talking to you," Ilara admitted. "It's forbiddance. Tomorrow is my purity test. If anyone knew I spoke with an outsider... Purity test? What's that?" Before she could answer, Ilara heard the distant sound of the city's night patrol. Fear shot through her. "I have to go. Please don't tell anyone you spoke to me." She quickly reburied the device, making sure to cover all traces, then hurried down the hill toward home. Her mind raced faster than her feet. She had spoken to a human, an actual being from another world. And he hadn't sounded primitive or dangerous. He had sounded concerned. Slipping back into her house, Ilara made it to her room undetected. Her heart still pounded as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. In less than 12 hours, she would face the purity test, connected to machines. That could detect her true thoughts and feelings, and now her head was filled with forbidden curiosity about the humans coming to her world. The voice from the stars had changed everything. Sleep eluded her as one terrible truth became clear. She might be the first Vozarian in generations to fail the purity test. Morning came too quickly. Ilara had barely slept, her mind filled with thoughts of the human voice and the ship approaching their world. When her mother entered to help her prepare, Ilara's tired eyes betrayed her restless night. "You look unwell," Matron Cellini said, her voice sharp with worry. "The High Priestess will notice. Did you not sleep?" "I was nervous," Ilara replied. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her mother helped her dress in the traditional white robe worn by all who faced the purity test. The soft fabric fell to her ankles, embroidered with silver symbols representing Vozarian virtues, conformity, purity, devotion, and order. "Remember your place?" her mother said, fastening the ceremonial collar around Ilara's neck. "Your father and I have worked our entire lives to reach our positions. Do not dishonor us today." The family traveled in silence to the temple complex at the city center. Massive white stone pillars rose toward the sky, their surfaces carved with the history of Vozarian civilization. Hundreds of citizens had gathered to witness the ceremony. Purity tests happened monthly, but Ilara's status as the daughter of Council Elder Torvak made this a significant social event. Other young Vozarians in white robes stood in a line outside the temple doors. Their faces showed nothing but calm acceptance. Ilara tried to mirror their expressions, though her heart raced. She took her place in line as her parents joined other officials on the temple steps. The crowd fell silent as High Priestess Nimara appeared. Tall even for a Vozarian, with elaborate silver markings painted on her blue skin, she commanded respect with a single glance. "Today these young citizens prove their worth," the High Priestess announced. "Today they confirm their purity of thought and devotion to our ways. Enter now into judgment." The temple doors swung open. One by one, the candidates walked inside. Ilara's legs felt heavy as she followed the others into the sacred space. The interior was dim, lit only by floating light orbs that cast a blue glow over ancient stone carvings. They were led to separate waiting areas. Ilara sat alone on a stone bench, trying to quiet her mind. From previous ceremonies she had witnessed, she knew candidates entered the testing chamber one at a time. Inside, they would be connected to the truth machine and asked a series of questions designed to reveal their true thoughts. Time passed slowly. One by one, the others were called forward. Each returned with a pleased expression and a silver mark on their forehead showing they had passed. Finally, a temple attendant approached. Ilara, daughter of Elder Torvik and Matron Salimi. The High Priestess awaits. Ilara followed the attendant through a narrow corridor. Her hands trembled slightly and she clasped them together to hide her fear. The testing chamber door opened, revealing a circular room with a single chair at its center. High Priestess Namara stood beside the chair, her expression unreadable. Behind her, 3 temple officials operated the truth machine, an ancient device said to date back to the early days of their civilization. Sit, the High Priestess commanded. Ilara obeyed, lowering herself into the cold stone chair. Metal restraints automatically closed around her wrists and ankles. She had expected this movement during testing could disrupt the readings. Temple. Attendants attached small sensors to her temples and the center of her forehead. A thin circlet was placed on her head, connecting to the larger machine behind her. The purity test measures not just your words, but the truth behind them, High Priestess Namara explained. Answer honestly, though the machine will know if you attempt deception. Ilara nodded, her mouth dry with fear. Do you pledge your life to upholding Vozarian traditions without question? I do, Ilara answered, trying to believe her own words. A small light on the machine flickered yellow. The High Priestess's eyes narrowed slightly. Do you believe contact with lesser species would contaminate our culture? Ilara thought of the human voice from the night before. He hadn't sounded lesser or dangerous. I believe we should be cautious. About outside influence, she said carefully. The machine light flickered yellow again, then briefly flashed red. The High Priestess's expression hardened. Answer directly. Do you believe outsiders are impure and dangerous to our way of life? Ilara tried to push away her doubts, to give the answer she knew was expected. Yes, she whispered. The machine flashed bright red. A murmur rose from the temple officials behind the High Priestess. You speak falsely, High Priestess Namara said. We will continue. Question after question followed. Ilara tried desperately to control her thoughts, to believe the answers she gave, but the machine detected her uncertainty. Each time the light flashed red, the High Priestess's expression grew colder. Final question, the High Priestess said after what felt like hours. Would you sacrifice your individual desires for the greater purity of Vozarian society? Ilara knew what she should say. But the night on the hill, the stars, the voice from another world, these had awakened something in her that couldn't be silenced. I believe in our society, she began, but I also believe we could learn from. The machine erupted in bright red light before she could finish. Alarms sounded throughout the chamber. The temple officials stood from their seats, faces showing shock and disgust. Impure, one of them declared. Contaminated thoughts. Another added. High Priestess Namara stepped back from Ilara as if proximity itself might spread dangerous ideas. In all my years I have never witnessed such failure. The restraints released from Ilara's wrists and ankles. 2 guards immediately moved to her sides, gripping her arms firmly. Take her to the preparation chamber, the High Priestess ordered. The purification must begin at dawn tomorrow. Her mind requires complete restructuring. The guards pulled Ilara to her feet. Her legs felt weak beneath her as the reality of what had happened sank in. She had failed. No one failed the purity test. Not in generations. They led her through a different door than the one she had entered, away from where the other candidates waited. Down stone steps they went, deep beneath the temple to a section Ilara had never seen. They reached a hallway lined with small cells. The guard opened one and pushed her inside. The door closed with a heavy sound, and Ilara was alone. The cell contained only a narrow bed and a small washing basin. No windows, no view of the sky or stars. Ilara sat on the edge of the bed, her body numb with shock. Outside, she could hear the ceremony continuing. Soon her parents would learn of her failure. By law, they would disown her immediately. She would undergo purification and then be reassigned to a low position in society. Her family connections erased, tears slipped down her blue cheeks as she thought of the procedure tomorrow. She had heard whispers about purification, how it removed dangerous thoughts but often took much more. Some said those who underwent the process were never the same. Their curiosity and spark extinguished forever. As darkness fell and the sounds from above faded, Ilara curled on the hard bed. She thought of the stars she couldn't see and the human voice that had spoken to her. The ship would arrive tomorrow, the Starlight Venture, but she would never see it. By the time the sun rose again, the Ilara who had looked up at the stars with wonder would cease to exist. The human ship Starlight Venture dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zerthos system. On the bridge, Captain Ethan Miller watched the blue-green planet grow larger on the main screen. "First contact with the Vazarians," he said to his crew. "According to our limited information, they've achieved space travel but rarely leave their solar system." First Officer Lisa Hayes nodded. "Their transmissions suggest a highly organized society with advanced technology. Yet, they've shown little interest in the wider galaxy." At the communications station, Jack Carter frowned at his display. He hadn't mentioned the strange signal he'd received 2 nights ago. The voice had been young, female, and frightened. She had mentioned something called a purity test. Something about the brief exchange bothered him deeply. "Incoming transmission from the planet," Jack announced. "They're sending landing coordinates and a formal greeting." Captain Miller straightened his uniform. "Standard diplomatic protocol, everyone. The Vazarians are reportedly very formal and value structure. Let's not ruffle any feathers on our first visit." The Starlight Venture entered orbit around Zerthos. A small delegation prepared to take the shuttle to the surface. Captain Miller, First Officer Hayes, Jack, and 2 security officers. As the ship's communications specialist, Jack was essential for first contact missions. The shuttle ride was smooth. Jack stared out the window at the gleaming white city below. Something about the perfect order of the buildings seemed unnatural. Too rigid, they landed on a designated platform where a group of blue-skinned aliens waited in elaborate robes. The humans exited their shuttle and approached the welcoming party. A tall male Vazarian stepped forward. "I am Council Elder Torvak. On behalf of Zerthos, I welcome you." His voice was flat, his face showing little emotion. Captain Miller smiled. "Captain Ethan Miller of Earth's diplomatic fleet. We're honored to establish formal relations between our worlds." Jack studied the Vazarian officials. Their blue skin had a slight shimmer, and their silver hair was styled identically. Most striking were their eyes, pale and eerily similar in their lack of expression. As the formal greetings continued, Jack noticed Council Elder Torvak seemed distracted. The Vazarian's eyes occasionally darted to other officials, and tension showed in his posture. The delegation was led into a large building for the official welcome ceremony. Inside, Jack heard 2 Vazarian officials speaking quietly behind him. "The Elder's daughter will undergo purification at dawn. A shame for one of such high status to fail so completely." "Did you witness it? They say her thoughts were fully contaminated. Interested in outsiders, questioning our ways. The worst case in generations." Jack slowed his pace, trying to hear more. A daughter who failed because she was interested in outsiders. The timing matched his mysterious communication. The welcome ceremony lasted for hours. Speeches were given, gifts exchanged. Throughout it all, Jack couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. When a formal dinner was announced, he saw his opportunity. "Captain," he whispered to Miller during a break in the proceedings, "I need to check our communications. Equipment. There's a signal anomaly I should address." Captain Miller nodded. "Don't be long. These people seem to value punctuality." Jack slipped away from the group. Instead of heading toward their shuttle, he activated the small scanner on his wrist device. If the girl he'd spoken to was somewhere in this complex, her voice pattern might still be in his communicator's memory. The scanner picked up a faint match deep within the building. Jack followed the signal, moving carefully to avoid Vazarian. Officials. The deeper he went, the fewer people he encountered. Eventually, he reached a lower level that felt older than the rest of the structure. The walls were stone rather than the smooth white material above. His scanner led him down a hallway lined with what appeared to be cells. At the end of the hall, the signal was strongest. Jack approached the cell door and peered through a small opening. Inside, a young female Vazarian sat on a narrow bed, her face in her hands. "Hello?" he called softly. The girl's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. Jack recognized the face, blue skin like the others, but with eyes that showed emotion, curiosity, and intelligence. "Are you Ilara?" he asked. She approached the door cautiously. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" "I'm Jack Carter, communications officer on the Starlight Venture. We spoke 2 nights ago when you found the old communication device." Recognition dawned on her face. "The human ship. You actually came. What's happening? Why are you locked up?" Ilara's voice trembled. "I failed my purity test. They detected my interest in other worlds, my questions about our traditions. At dawn, they will perform the purification procedure." "What does that mean?" "They will restructure my brain. Remove the thoughts they consider impure." Her hands shook. "Those who undergo purification are never the same. Their curiosity disappears, their questions stop. They become like everyone else." Jack felt cold horror at her words. "That's not right. No society should force people to think the same way." "It is our way," Ilara said, though her tone suggested she didn't agree. "My parents have already disowned me, as is required when someone fails the test." "Your parents?" Jack remembered. The distracted council elder. "Is your father named Torvak?" She nodded. "He's leading the welcome for your ship." Jack checked the time. "I need to get back before they notice I'm gone. But I'll help you, Ilara, somehow." "Why would you help me?" "You don't even know me," Jack thought for a moment. "On Earth, we believe every person has the right to their own thoughts. What they're planning to do to you, we would call it a crime." He hurried back to the upper levels, mind racing. The diplomatic dinner would be starting soon. He had to tell Captain Miller what he'd discovered. The grand dining hall was filled with Vazarian officials. When Jack slipped back in, he found his place at the table beside First Officer Hayes. "Where were you?" she whispered. "I need to speak with the captain after dinner," Jack replied quietly. "It's important." The meal progressed with formal conversation about trade possibilities and cultural exchange. Jack noticed how carefully the Vazarians steered away from topics about their social structure or beliefs. When the dinner finally ended, Jack approached Captain Miller as they walked back to their assigned quarters. "Captain, I need to speak with you privately," he said. Once inside the captain's room, Jack explained everything: the mysterious transmission, finding Ilara, and the purification procedure scheduled for dawn. Captain Miller's expression grew grave. "This puts us in a difficult position. We can't interfere with their cultural practices during first contact." "With respect, sir, this isn't culture, it's oppression. They're going to essentially lobotomize her for being curious about other worlds." The captain paced the room. "I'll speak with Council Elder Torvik in the morning, express our concerns about this practice." "That will be too late," Jack insisted. "The procedure is at dawn. What exactly are you suggesting, communications officer?" Jack took a deep breath. "I don't know, sir. But we can't let this happen. On Earth, we'd never stand by and watch someone's mind be forcibly altered for asking questions." Captain Miller studied Jack's face. "Get some rest, Carter." "That's an order. We'll discuss this further in the morning." Jack returned to his room, but sleep was impossible. Outside his window, the first of Zerthos's twin suns would rise in just a few hours. And with it, Ilara would lose everything that made her unique. He sat on the edge of his bed, thinking about the fear in her eyes. Captain Miller was following protocol, but Jack knew he couldn't wait for official channels. By the time diplomacy ran its course, it would be too late for Ilara making his decision. Jack pulled out his personal communicator and sent a message to First Officer Hayes. Need to talk, urgent, meet me in my quarters. First Officer Lisa Hayes arrived at Jack's quarters within minutes. Her expression was serious as she closed the door behind her. This better be important, Carter. It's the middle of the night? Jack explained everything quickly, the signal. Finding Ilara and the purification procedure scheduled for dawn. I can't just let it happen, he finished. Captain Miller wants to follow diplomatic channels, but by then it will be too late. Lisa frowned. They're talking about interfering with their society that violates our first contact protocols. I know, Jack admitted, but this isn't about politics. It's about a person who's going to have her mind altered because she dared to be curious. Isn't that against everything humans believe in? Lisa was quiet for a moment. Tell me about her. She's young, probably equivalent to early 20s in human years. She's different from the others. Her eyes have life in them. She asks questions. She's interested in the universe beyond her world. Jack paused. They're going to erase all that. Lisa walked to the window, looking out at the alien city. My grandmother was a political prisoner in her country before she escaped to America. They used similar tactics, punishing those who questioned authority. She always said the worst crime was standing by when you could have helped. She turned back to Jack. I'll help you. But we need a plan. We can't just break her out without causing a diplomatic incident, Jack nodded. I've been thinking about that. We need a distraction. For the next hour, they developed their plan. Lisa would return to her quarters and prepare an emergency message for Captain Miller, timed to be delivered just before dawn. Meanwhile, Jack would use their portable scanner to map the most direct route from Ilara's cell to their shuttle. We'll need these, Lisa said, handing Jack two small devices. Portable cloaking generators. They only work for about 15 minutes, but they should help us avoid guards. Jack slipped the devices into his pocket. How did you get these? Security Officer Nguyen owes me a favor. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. She checked the time. It's late. We should rest for a few hours. Meet me in the courtyard at 4:30 hour. That gives us about 2 hours before dawn. Jack tried to sleep but couldn't. His mind kept returning to Ilara, alone in her cell. Around 4th hour, he gathered the equipment he needed and slipped out of his quarters. The Vozarian complex was quiet. Most officials had retired to their homes after the diplomatic dinner, leaving only guards patrolling the hallways. Jack made his way to the courtyard, staying in shadows. Lisa arrived precisely on time, dressed in dark clothing rather than her uniform. Ready? Jack nodded. I mapped the route. There's a service entrance that leads down to the lower levels. Fewer guards that way. They moved quietly through the complex, ducking into alcoves whenever patrols passed. The service entrance was locked, but Lisa produced a small device that bypassed the security system. Another favor from Nguyen? Jack whispered. Focus, Carter. They descended into the older part of the building. The stone corridors were dimly lit, making it easier to hide but harder to navigate. Jack checked his scanner, following the path he'd discovered earlier. 2 guards at the entrance to the detention area, Jack whispered as they approached a junction. We'll need to use the cloaking devices now, Lisa nodded. Remember, 15 minutes maximum. They overheat after that. They activated the devices. The technology bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. It wasn't perfect. A careful observer might notice a slight distortion, but it would work if they moved carefully. They slipped past the guards unnoticed and made their way down the hallway of cells. Most were empty. At the end, they found Ilara's cell. Jack deactivated his cloaking device to avoid frightening her. Ilara, he called softly through the door. It's Jack Carter. I've come to help you. Ilara appeared at the door, her eyes wide with disbelief. You came back? Stand back, Lisa said, examining the lock. She attached a small device to the control panel. After a few seconds, the door slid open. Ilara hesitated. If I leave, I can never return. I'll be an outcast forever. If you stay, you won't be you anymore, Jack said gently. Is that really a choice? Ilara stepped out of the cell. How will we get past the guards? Lisa handed her the second cloaking device. Put this on your wrist. Press the blue button to activate it. Stay close to us and move exactly as we do. They started back the way they came, moving slowly to maintain the cloaking effect. They passed the guards without incident and climbed the stairs to the main level. As they reached the upper hallway, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the complex. That's not our distraction, Lisa said. Someone must have checked her cell. Change of plans, Jack said. We need to move faster, cloaking or not. They hurried through the corridors, hearing shouts and running footsteps all around them. The cloaking devices began to flicker, reaching their time limit. This way, Jack said, leading them toward the main temple chamber, a shortcut to the courtyard where they could reach their shuttle. As they entered the massive chamber, the cloaking devices failed completely. At the same moment, the main doors opened. High Priestess Nimara entered, followed by several temple officials and guards. Behind them came Council Elder Torvak and Matron Selena, Ilara's parents. Stop them! The High Priestess commanded when she spotted the trio. Guards rushed forward. Lisa took a defensive stance, her military training evident. Stay behind me, she told ELA. Jack tried to spot an exit, but they were surrounded. More guards poured in from side entrances. Ilara, Council Elder Torvak's voice cut through the chaos. Return to your cell immediately, and your friends may leave unharmed. Father, Ilara replied, stepping forward despite Lisa's attempt to. Keep her back. I can't. You know what the purification will do to me? It will make you pure, her mother said coldly. It will remove these dangerous thoughts. It will destroy who I am, Ilara countered. Her voice trembled but remained strong. The High Priestess approached, her expression severe. Outsiders, you violate our most sacred laws by interfering with our traditions. This female has failed the purity test. Her mind is contaminated with dangerous ideas. Jack stepped forward, despite Lisa's warning glance. On our world, we don't punish people for having different thoughts. We celebrate it. Your world is not ours, the High Priestess replied. Here, order and purity are sacred. At what cost? Jack asked. You're destroying minds rather than allowing them to grow. How can a society advance without new ideas? The High Priestess's eyes narrowed. Our society has thrived for thousands of years following these principles. But at what cost? Jack pressed. How many bright minds have you erased? How many questions were never asked? How many discoveries never made because someone was afraid to think differently? His words echoed in the vast chamber. Jack noticed younger Vazarians in the growing crowd exchanging glances. Lisa touched his arm, pointing discreetly toward the entrance. Captain Miller had arrived, surrounded by the rest of the human delegation. The room fell silent as the captain approached. What's happening here? He asked, his voice calm but authoritative. The High Priestess turned to him. Your crew members are attempting to interfere with our sacred traditions. Captain Miller looked at Jack and Lisa, then at Ilara standing between them. I see, and what tradition requires 3-to-1 armed guards against unarmed people? Before the High Priestess could answer, a commotion broke out at the main entrance. Several young Vozarians pushed their way into the chamber, their faces showing an emotion rarely seen in their society, defiance. We want to hear what the humans have to say, one of them called out. We want to know about other worlds. The temple erupted in chaos. Guards looked to the High Priestess for orders, unsure how to handle this unprecedented situation. In the confusion, Captain Miller moved to Jack's side. This is not how I planned our first day of diplomatic relations, he said quietly. Sorry, sir, Jack replied, but I couldn't let them destroy her mind. Captain Miller studied Ilara thoughtfully. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. He turned to address the chamber. I believe we need to have a more comprehensive discussion about cultural exchange. The temple chamber grew louder as more young Vozarians pushed their way inside. Guards tried to maintain order but seemed reluctant to use force in the sacred space. Captain Miller seized the moment of confusion. High Priestess, he said, raising his voice to be heard above the noise. "I propose we move this discussion to a more private setting. Perhaps we can find a solution that respects both our ways." High Priestess Namara's face showed rare emotion, anger mixed with uncertainty. She had never faced such a challenge to her authority. "There is nothing to discuss," she declared. "Our laws are clear. The impure must be purified." One of the young Vozarians stepped forward from the crowd. "But what if our laws are wrong? What if purity of thought isn't the only path?" Murmurs spread through the chamber. Elder Torvak looked around nervously, clearly disturbed by this unprecedented display of dissent. "This is your doing," he said to Jack. "You bring chaos to our ordered society." "No," Ilara said, her voice stronger now. "These questions were always here, Father. We were just too afraid to ask them." The first light of dawn began to filter through the high windows of the temple. The purification chamber would be prepared by now, waiting for its subject. "Enough!" the High Priestess commanded. "Guards, separate the humans from the failed one. The ceremony must proceed as tradition demands." The guards moved forward, but they hesitated when Captain Miller stepped between them and Ilara. "Before you take action," he said calmly, "consider the diplomatic implications. We came in peace, seeking friendship between our worlds. How would it look to Earth if your first act was to imprison our people for helping someone in danger?" The High Priestess paused, considering his words. Elder Torvak moved to her side and whispered urgently. Politics and tradition were colliding, creating a situation no one had prepared for. Jack saw their opportunity. He leaned close to Lisa and Ilara. "The shuttle landing pad is just beyond the east courtyard. If we can reach it. Lisa nodded slightly. She caught Captain Miller's eye and made a subtle gesture toward the side exit. The captain gave an almost imperceptible nod in return. "High Priestess," Captain Miller said, drawing all attention to himself, "allow me to explain Earth's perspective on freedom of thought. Perhaps then you'll understand our concern." As he began a detailed speech about Earth's history and values, Jack slowly guided Ilara toward the side exit. Lisa followed, maintaining a protective position. They had almost reached the door when Matron Cellini noticed their movement. "They're escaping!" she cried. Guards turned toward them. Jack grabbed Ilara's hand and ran. Lisa followed, pulling out a small device and activating it. A blinding flash filled the chamber, momentarily disorienting everyone inside. "Now!" Lisa shouted. They burst through the door into a corridor. "This way," Jack said, leading them toward the east courtyard. Behind them, shouts and running footsteps echoed through the halls. They raced through the building, taking turns Jack had memorized from his scanner. Guards appeared ahead of them, blocking their path. "Back!" Lisa called, pulling them down a different corridor. "Alternative route!" They wound through the complex, the sounds of pursuit never far behind. Finally, they emerged into a small garden that connected to the east courtyard. "The landing pad is just beyond those arches," Jack said, pointing ahead. As they ran across the garden, a figure stepped from behind a column, blocking their path. It was Elder Torvik, Ilara's father. "Father," Ilara said, stopping in her tracks. "You dishonor everything our family stands for," he said, his voice cold. "I'm sorry," she replied, "but I can't be what you want me to be. If you leave with these humans, you will never be welcome here again. You will be forgotten, your name erased from our family records." Ilara's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "I know, but if I stay, the real me will be erased anyway." For a moment, something like sadness crossed Elder Torvak's face. Then he stepped aside. "Go, then. You are no longer my daughter." They ran past him, through the arches, and onto the landing pad where the human shuttle waited. The hatch was already open. Captain Miller must have sent a remote signal. "Get inside," Lisa ordered, taking a defensive position as guards poured into the courtyard. Jack helped Ilara into the shuttle and jumped in after her. Lisa backed in last, sealing the hatch. Behind her, "Start the engines," she called to Jack, who was already at the controls. The shuttle hummed to life. Through the viewport, they could see more guards arriving, some carrying weapons now. What about Captain Miller and the others? Ilara asked. The captain can take care of himself, Lisa assured her. He knows what he's doing. The shuttle lifted off just as guards reached the landing pad. They rose quickly into the sky, leaving the white city behind. Setting course for the Starlight Venture, Jack said. Programming the navigation system, Ilara sat quietly, watching her world grow smaller beneath them. I can never go back, she whispered. Jack moved to sit beside her. I know it's hard. You're free now, free to think, to question, to be yourself. What will happen to me? Lisa joined them. Captain Miller anticipated something like this might happen. He told me that if we had to leave in a hurry, Earth would offer you asylum. You would be welcome among us. But what about your captain and the others we left behind? The captain is a skilled diplomat, Lisa said. He'll use this situation to negotiate. Your people want our technology and knowledge. He'll make your safety a condition of any agreement. As if on cue, the communication system activated. Captain Miller's voice came through, sounding remarkably calm. Lisa, Jack, do you read me? Yes, Captain, Lisa replied. We're approaching the Starlight Venture with Ilara. Good. The situation here is ... interesting. It seems your actions have sparked quite a debate among the younger Vozarians. Several have publicly questioned the purity test. Will you be able to return to the ship? Jack asked. Yes, the High Priestess has agreed to continue diplomatic talks. She's not happy, but she's practical. They want what Earth can offer too much to break relations completely. He paused. Is Ilara all right? Jack looked at her. Despite everything, her eyes showed relief rather than regret. Yes, sir. She's fine. Tell her she'd be welcome on Earth. And Jack, we'll discuss your violation of orders later. Yes, sir. Jack replied, but he couldn't help smiling. The shuttle docked with the Starlight Venture. As they stepped aboard the larger ship, crew members looked curiously at Ilara, the first Vozarian to ever leave her world. What happens now? She asked, looking around at the unfamiliar surroundings. Now, Jack said, you get to explore the universe you've always wondered about. You get to ask all the questions you want. You get to be yourself. For the first time since they'd met, Ilara smiled. It transformed her face, making her look younger and filled with hope. 6 months later, Ilara stood at the observation deck of the Starlight Venture, watching stars streak by as the ship traveled between worlds. She had become a valuable member of the crew, serving as a cultural liaison when they encountered new civilizations. Jack joined her at the window. Message came for you, he said, handing her a datapad. Ilara activated it, surprised to see encoded text from Zerthos. Such communications were rare. It's from a group of young Vozarians, she said as she read. They've formed a discussion circle to talk about ideas from other worlds. They're questioning the old ways, especially the purity test. She looked up at Jack. They say I inspired them. You did, Jack replied. Sometimes it just takes one person to change a world. Ilara looked back at the stars stretching before them. When I was little, I used to sneak out to look at the stars and wonder what was out there. I never imagined I would actually see them up close. Any regrets? Jack asked. She thought about her former life, structured, predictable, and devoid. Questions. She thought about her parents who had chosen tradition over their daughter. Then she looked at the infinite possibilities stretching before her. No, she said. No regrets. The ship continued its journey through space, carrying Ilara toward new worlds, new questions, and a future where thinking differently wasn't just allowed, it was celebrated.